Imagine spending thousands of dollars planning your dream trip to Europe, only to realize, halfway through your vacation, that you've been making mistakes that are costing you money, wasting your time, and stopping you from enjoying the experience you've been dreaming about for years. I know that feeling because I've been there. When I planned my first trip to Europe, I thought I had done everything right. I watched travel videos, read blog posts, saved dozens of places on Google Maps, and planned every single day down to the hour. I thought I was prepared, but the moment I actually arrived, I realized there were so many things nobody had warned me about. Some mistakes were expensive, some were frustrating, and some completely changed the way I travel today. If you're planning your first trip to Europe, or even if you've already been, you'll want to stick around because these are the lessons I wish someone had shared with me before I packed my bags. And trust me, mistake number 4 is one that almost every first-time visitor makes without even realizing it. Let's dive in. Introduction. Hello and welcome back to Travel Wander, the channel where we explore Europe through real travel experiences, practical travel advice, and honest lessons that help you travel smarter, not harder. Whether you're dreaming about strolling through the streets of Paris, riding trains through the Swiss Alps, exploring the canals of Amsterdam, or enjoying authentic pasta in Rome, my goal is simple: help you avoid the mistakes I made so your trip is filled with unforgettable memories instead of unnecessary stress. Traveling through Europe can honestly be one of the most rewarding experiences you'll ever have. The history, the architecture, the cultures, the food, every country has something unique to offer. But Europe also has its own way of doing things, and if it's your first time visiting, a few small mistakes can quickly turn into big headaches. So let's start with the biggest one. Mistake number 1. Trying to see too much. One of the biggest misconceptions people have when planning a Europe trip is believing they need to see everything. I completely understand why. When you finally get the chance to visit Europe, it feels like you need to make every second count. You look at a map and think, I'm already here. Maybe I can visit France, Italy, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Belgium, and the Netherlands, all in one trip. It sounds exciting. In fact, it sounds like the adventure of a lifetime. But here's what actually happens. Instead of experiencing Europe, you spend your vacation moving through Europe. You're rushing to catch trains, checking into hotels, checking out the next morning, looking at your watch, dragging your luggage across train stations, waiting at airports, standing in security lines. Before you know it, your vacation begins to feel more like a race than an adventure. I remember talking to another traveler who proudly told me they had visited 7 countries in 12 days. At first, I was impressed. Then I asked them something simple. What was your favorite part? They paused. They couldn't answer immediately, not because Europe wasn't amazing, but because everything had become one giant blur. The train rides, the hotels, the landmarks, the restaurants, everything blended together. And that's when something clicked for me. Travel isn't about collecting countries. It's about collecting memories. Some of my favorite moments in Europe weren't famous landmarks at all. They were sitting in a quiet cafe while watching people go about their day. Walking down a street with no itinerary. Finding a tiny bakery that wasn't on any travel website. Watching the sunset without worrying about catching the next train. Those moments only happen when you slow down. If you're planning your first Europe trip, don't ask yourself, how many countries can I fit into my vacation? Instead ask, where do I want to create memories? You'll come home with fewer passport stamps, but far better stories. And speaking of stories, my next mistake came from thinking I needed to prepare for every possible situation. Mistake number 2. Overpacking. I'll be honest, the night before my first Europe trip, my suitcase looked like I was moving there permanently. I packed clothes for warm weather, cold weather, rain, fancy restaurants, casual sightseeing, shoes for walking, shoes for dinner, extra jackets, extra everything. In my mind, I wasn't overpacking. I was being prepared. At the airport, I actually felt proud of myself. I thought, if anything happens, I've got it covered. Then reality arrived. The first challenge wasn't the airport. It wasn't customs. It wasn't finding my hotel. It was my suitcase. Europe isn't designed for huge, heavy luggage. Many train stations have long staircases. Older hotels may not have elevators. Historic city centers are filled with uneven cobblestone streets that look beautiful in photos but feel very different when you're dragging a heavy suitcase over them. I remember stopping several times just to catch my breath after carrying my luggage up another flight of stairs. And every time I had to repack, I kept asking myself the same question: why did I bring all this? The funny thing is, I ended up wearing the same comfortable outfits most of the trip anyway. Most travelers do. You don't need a different outfit for every photo. You don't need 5 pairs of shoes. You don't need to pack for every possible scenario. Europe has stores. If you genuinely need something, chances are you can buy it. One simple rule has completely changed the way I travel. Pack for the traveler you actually are, not the traveler you imagine you'll become. Your back will thank you. Your shoulders will thank you. And every staircase you climb in Europe will feel just a little easier. But even after learning to pack lighter, I still made another mistake that cost me both time and money. Mistake number 3. Eating only near tourist attractions. Let's be honest, when you're standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum, or any famous European landmark, the last thing you want to do is walk another 15 minutes just to find lunch. That's exactly what tourist restaurants count on. They're convenient, they're visible, and they're usually full. On my first trip, I fell into that trap more than once. I'd see a restaurant with an incredible view, sit down without thinking twice, and order a meal. Was the food terrible? Not necessarily, but was it worth the price? Usually not. Later in my trip, I started doing something different. Instead of eating beside the attraction, I'd simply walk a few streets away. The difference was incredible. The crowds became smaller, prices dropped, menus became more authentic, and suddenly I was eating in places where locals were having lunch instead of restaurants designed almost entirely for tourists. Some of the best meals I had in Europe weren't planned at all. They happened because I wandered a little farther. Travel has taught me that convenience often comes with a premium price. Sometimes all it takes is a 10-minute walk to discover a meal you'll remember long after you've forgotten the famous landmark nearby. And while we're talking about exploring, the next mistake surprised me more than any other. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about transportation. It was about my mindset. Mistake number 4. Expecting Europe to feel like home. Before visiting Europe, I thought the biggest adjustments would be learning a few local phrases or figuring out public transportation. I couldn't have been more wrong. The real adjustment was realizing that Europe wasn't supposed to feel like home. And that's actually the beauty of traveling. Simple everyday things can be completely different depending on where you are. Restaurants may not rush to bring you the bill because dining is often meant to be enjoyed slowly. Many shops may close earlier than you're used to. People might greet each other differently. Public transportation may operate with customs that feel unfamiliar at first. None of these differences are bad. They're simply different. I'll admit that, in the beginning, I caught myself comparing everything to what I was used to. This isn't how we do it back home. But that mindset was stopping me from appreciating the experience. The moment I stopped comparing and started observing, everything changed. Instead of asking, why do they do things this way? I started asking, what can I learn from this? That small shift completely transformed how I experienced Europe. Travel isn't about finding another version of home. It's about stepping into someone else's world with curiosity and respect. Some of the moments that felt unusual at first eventually became the memories I cherished most. And believe it or not, the next mistake is one that catches thousands of first-time travelers before they even realize what's happened. Mistake number 5. Thinking cash is king everywhere. One thing I completely underestimated before visiting Europe was how differently people pay for things. Back home, I thought the safest thing to do would be to carry plenty of cash. After all, that's what many travel guides used to recommend. So before leaving, I exchanged a large amount of money. I felt prepared, but as I traveled, I quickly realized that many places across Europe had moved far beyond cash. Coffee shops, restaurants, train stations, museums, even small neighborhood stores. In many places, paying with a card or a mobile wallet wasn't just accepted. It was the normal way to pay. Then I found myself in the opposite situation. I had too much cash in one currency and was traveling into another country where it wasn't accepted. Now I had to find another exchange office, pay another conversion fee, and lose more money than I needed to. That experience taught me something important. Don't assume one payment method works everywhere. Before visiting each country, spend a few minutes learning what people commonly use. Carry a small amount of local cash for emergencies, but don't rely on it for everything. At the same time, don't rely entirely on cards either. Technology can fail, cards can be declined, phones can run out of battery. The smartest travelers prepare for both situations. Travel isn't about choosing cash or card. It's about having options. And speaking of planning ahead, my next mistake taught me that waiting until the last minute can be far more expensive than you expect. Mistake number 6. Waiting too long to book popular attractions. When planning my first Europe trip, I thought buying tickets after I arrived would make my schedule more flexible. It sounded like a smart idea. If I feel like visiting something tomorrow, I'll just buy a ticket tomorrow. Simple. At least, that's what I thought. Then reality stepped in. Some of Europe's most famous attractions sell out days, or even weeks, in advance, especially during peak travel seasons. I watched people happily walking into attractions with pre-booked tickets while others stood in long queues hoping there would still be availability. Sometimes there wasn't. Imagine finally standing outside a place you've dreamed about visiting for years, only to discover the next available ticket is 2 days away, or worse, after you've already left the city. That feeling is incredibly disappointing. Now, I'm not saying you need to schedule every minute of your trip. In fact, I encourage leaving room for spontaneous adventures. But if there's one place you've always dreamed of visiting, don't leave it to chance. Book it early. You'll spend less time worrying and more time enjoying the experience you've been looking forward to. Because at the end of the day, memories are worth planning for. Now here's another mistake I never expected to make. It wasn't expensive, it wasn't stressful, but it stopped me from seeing some of the most incredible parts of Europe. Mistake number 7. Staying only in the famous tourist areas. When people imagine Europe, they picture iconic places. The Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum, Big Ben, the canals of Amsterdam, the Swiss Alps. And yes, those places absolutely deserve their reputation. They're beautiful, they're historic, they're unforgettable. But here's something I discovered. Some of my favorite memories didn't happen at famous landmarks. They happened after I wandered away from them. One afternoon, I took a street that wasn't on my itinerary. There wasn't a famous monument. No massive crowd. No souvenir shops. Just colorful buildings, a small bakery, a few locals chatting outside a cafe, and children playing in a nearby square. For the next hour, I completely forgot about my travel checklist. I simply enjoyed being there. That's when I realized something. The goal isn't just to see Europe. It's to experience it. Sometimes the places with the fewest tourists tell you the most about a country's culture. You notice everyday life, the rhythm of the city, the sounds, the smells, the conversations you don't understand but somehow still enjoy hearing. Those are the moments that stay with you long after you've returned home. So yes, visit the famous attractions. Take the photos, admire the history, but don't be afraid to turn down a random street just because it looks interesting. You never know what you'll find. And believe me, that small decision can completely change your trip. Now the final mistake in this section is probably the one I hear people talk about the least. Yet it's one that affects almost every traveler. If you've already traveled to Europe, what's one mistake you made that taught you a valuable lesson? And if you're planning your very first trip, which mistake in today's video surprised you the most?